Okay, thanks for joining everyone. Beate, over to you.
Hello. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending from where you join us for the October Wednesday webinar of PhUSE. So warm welcome and thank you for joining. Um, I think we do have a real exciting agenda for today, and let me quickly go through the agenda. So I do have a welcome and a PhUSE board update for you. So myself, I'm Beate. I'm the Educations Director of PhUSE. Then we will have an update on the newly introduced project of good programming practice in macro development, which affects mainly everybody in the industry, I think. And the same holds true for the best practices for quality control and validation. So new projects and very exciting to hear of the leads there. Then we do have an introduction into the RDF linked data project for potential non-clinical use. Very exciting and looking into the future of what will be coming in the industry. Lastly, but not least, we do have an introduction to clinical development design framework. So let me start with the update from the board of directors. And you can imagine, so the next to come is our PhUSE EU Connect conference in Frankfurt. That's scheduled for the 4th to the 7th of November, and so will be coming soon. There are still a few tickets available. So out of 700 seats, we have a bit more than 50 still open. So maybe that's the last chance to register. So we have a really exciting agenda with 3 keynote speakers covering industry, charity, and some motivational aspects. So this is Kirk Bourne from Booz Allen Hamilton, Luke Siemens, CEO of School in a Bag, and Emma Lawton, a creative director and charity campaigner. We do have more than 140 presentations in 18 streams, of which some are newly introduced and looking into what will be coming in our industry, like the machine learning aspects. We also have some hands-on workshops where you still have the opportunity to attend, and as well as the leadership team. So give it a thought and join us in Frankfurt. There is also a new initiative that is going to be launched first time at this the Frankfurt EU Connect conference. So we will have a booth that's dedicated to our PhUSE working group projects, and that will be set up in the exhibitor hall. And the working group leads and projects lead have kindly agreed to be hand to answer you any questions you may have, and to help get a better understanding of the projects that are currently active in the PhUSE community. And I think that's a good chance to talk to those guys, find out which working groups you might be interested in and you would like to join. That's an excellent opportunity to kind of really shape the industry and also for some personal development. So I really encourage everybody to give it a thought. And even if you can't join the conference, have a look at our PhUSE webpage and find out about the working groups. You can also join online and through the web. So we will have Lisa Brooks, and she's in charge of optimizing the use of data standards working group. Anders Wittstrup about cloud adoption. We will have Bev Heiss and Guy Garrett for data engineering. We will have Frank Biedermann and Markus Stoll for the PhUSE Wiki technical support, Andy Richardson for the Key Performance Indicators project, Mark Foxwell for the Good Programming Practice project, and Andy Richardson again for emerging trends and technologies. Ian Fleming and Jim McDermott for the group looking into educating for the future. Chris Price as the representative and the steering board of the working groups from the PhUSE board of directors, and then Yvonne Moores and myself as newly introduced leads for the CDISC Primer project, which is a collaboration with CDISC actually. So, but it's not only the PhUSE EU Connect conference. After the very successful first US Connect conference back in June, there will be the next US conference being held in Baltimore in February. And please note the early bird registration closes on November 2nd already. So if you're planning to join, it's time to register. Also for this conference, we have kind of very high number of abstracts received, and the committee is now looking into the abstracts and making a best selection for all of us to have an interesting conference. So there will be keynote presentations, again, discussion clubs, workshops, of course, an exhibition area. We will have time for networking, and also there will be a Connect dinner, as it's kind of the PhUSE tradition. And because the US Connect conference now takes place in February, the CSS conference, which was usually held in spring, is now moved to June and will be taking place from June 9th to June 11th, again in Silver Spring Civic Center. That's the conference where the working groups meet and work on their projects together with the representatives from the regulatory agencies. And the registration for this computational science symposium will open in January. Furthermore, as probably and hopefully all of you know, we are running a lot of single day events, and we had already almost 20 throughout the year and around the globe, but there are still a few to come. So there are still 2 in November and 1 in December scheduled for this year. And this tradition will of course be continued next year. For agenda details and registration, look out at the PhUSE website, please. That brings me to the PhUSE news. So the last newsletter was published early September, and the next monthly mailing is going to be out on November 1st. But there are many possibilities to find out about PhUSE. You just look into our resources through the different medias and on the PhUSE website. And there are also, for example, also of this webinar, you will also find the recordings of all our events. So look out there and you won't miss anything. And we will go on with the tradition of Wednesday webinars, and the next one is going to take place end of November, November the 28th, and the topics will be published quite soon. I would encourage everybody, if you do have any questions for the board of directors or to any of the speakers kind of following now, please put them in the chat. We can't open the verbal communication, unfortunately, but you're encouraged to hand over your questions, and we will get back to you with our answers, hopefully. So thanks, everybody, and I'm now going to hand over to Ninan for the good programming practice in macro development.
Thanks, Beate. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thanks everyone for joining. I would like to start with my introduction. My name is Ninan, and I'm working with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals based in India. I also sit in the steering board of PhUSE Good Programming Practice, where this project was initially brainstormed. Later, this got approved by the PhUSE wider steering committee and repositioned the project under the Standard Analytics and Code Sharing Working Group. So this is a short information about this project. Without much delay, I would like to explain the project charter for good programming practice in macro development. So everyone knows that there is no introduction needed for macro, since most of us have involved in development or use the macro in in our everyday programming life in one way or the other way. Although I got these definitions from some blogs and website, it is defined as a smart statement or instructions which expand into a number of instructions. And I also going through a blog and to get the know how the word macro has been introduced in the programming world. So I go to know that in 1970s, some assembly programmers had coined this word macro when they are putting some mnemonics to convert that into number of instructions uh, to give some instructions to the computer in the assembly language. So they have coined this word. I'm not sure about the authenticity, but that's how the word macro has originated. And the main question we would like to address here is how GPP or good programming practice is significant while developing macro. So it is essential to have some guidelines or a set of best practices while we're creating a macro, which is efficient, reusable, and robust. So you can see our project objective in this slide. We all knew about the power of macro and its functionalities. It helps us to standardize, it helps us in automation, it helps us in follow a consistent approach within a project, within a study, within a therapeutic area, or even within an organization itself. But across the pharmaceutical industry or within our industry, it's a big question mark. And that's what we would like to address with this project. So you can see a beautiful picture, the metamorphosis. I would like to compare the macro development also with this metamorphosis process, where a pupa is transformed into a beautiful butterfly. Macro development is also in similar way. We are also developing the macro. We will start with a snippet, which ultimately transformed into a powerful macro. But we may tend to forget about the reusability or adaptability of the code while we are adding on functionality, which gives a tough time for the users or those who are adopting your code. So this is the scope. Actually, we were thinking about how we can tackle the situations which I explained in the previous paper. To tackle that tough scenarios, our working group is planning to create a white paper or guidelines as a first step. So it helps us to create a well-structured and precisely documented macro code, which will be easy to read and maintain over time. This paper will be primarily discussing on the coding style of macros and best practices while writing macro, structured documentation of macro, and optimization and saving compelling tail while using macro. And also we would like to introduce some software principles like refactoring in macro development. Refactoring is a widely used software techniques which is used in the software development. So we would like to discuss that topic also in this white paper and introduce this in the pharmaceutical programming. And also, I mean, how we can benefit or what is the goal of this paper. So as we are moving forward towards standardization of data capture, data reporting, and every place we are going with the standardized approach. But when programming or coding, do we have a standardized approach? That's a big question in front of us again. So there should be a consensus approach while we are coding. And we would like to introduce or present this paper as a guideline or a stepping stone as first step for a consensus approach for the coding. And we are also planning to include some useful tips and tricks in this paper, so which the programmers can benefit from that while developing a macro. And as I mentioned in previous slide, we would like to discuss about the possible use of refactoring in macro development. And of course, once we develop the macro, it's our duty to promote this paper and ensure that this paper is reaching the audience or to everyone of our programming community. So we would like to promote through different platforms, which is listed here, of course, through PhUSE Wiki, which that will be the first place we would like to publish. and also through some social networking sites like LinkedIn Publisher, and through some training materials, and of course through some conference presentations. Beate was mentioning about CSS and EU Connect and SDEs, and also we would like to represent some of our members from GPP board, or some of our team members will be representing or presenting these white paper in some of the conferences and presentations. And so this is the timelines for this project, and our recruitment is going on, and the kickoff and confirm the scope on if we will be also analyzing that any further refinement is needed in the scope or objective, that once the team is recruitment is completed, we will be sitting together and finalizing that on November next month. And the real work will start from December to February, where we will be investing more time on researching, literature search, and some testing, and finally the developing white paper or guideline for the white paper. And we are planning to finalize the draft paper and on March 2019, and sending it to the review to the wider team on April 2019, and aim to publish and promote the white paper on May 2019. So this is our team constitution. Myself, Ninan and Luke is leading this project, and Mark Foxwell is our mentor, and he is the chair for the Good Programming Practice Board. He's also an active contributor in this project. And Wendy Dobson from PhUSE, she's helping us with all the operational perspectives and recruitment. Virginia Redner from Merck recently joined our team, and we still have a lot of openings. So the need of the hour is we need more people to join us. We need your ideas and suggestions. Please contact any of us in this project team to be part of this team. Please share your thoughts and ideas so that we can develop a consensus paper which can be adopted for a macro development, which will be act as a guideline and a best practice document while we developing a macro. And thank you. Thanks. That's from me. Have a nice day. Enjoy the rest of the presentations.
So, my name is Jane Marr. I'm from Merck Incorporated and Company Incorporated. I'm in the programming group there, the statistical programming group there, and I am working on a project with Maria Dalton. Unfortunately, Maria is unable to get into the webinar today, so I'm going to be presenting the paper. Maria and I both are members of the Good Programming Practices Steering Committee. Our project also came about as part of that Good Programming Practices Board, and ours is to look for best practices for quality control and validation of programs. And our goal is to write a white paper on that and kind of try to get industry standards for how we validate our programs. So our proposal that we presented to PhUSE was to create a subgroup that would write a white paper on the topics of best practices for quality control and validation. It was approved in September by PhUSE, and as I said earlier, it came from the Good Programming Practices Work Group, and we've been assigned to work under the umbrella of the Standard Analysis and Code Sharing Group. So we'll be working on that white paper, and part of our goal today is to encourage people to join our group and help with that white paper. So the abstract that we wrote for our paper basically is about having quality and accuracy in our health and life science industries, and that includes our programming, so that patients and regulators can trust the analysis that we do on our clinical trial data. The purpose of the white paper will be to provide an in-depth review of the best practices to check the quality and validate our programs that we use to generate those analyses. So the scope will be the quality control analyses and clinical data in health and life sciences organizations, and it's applicable to any organizations who produce analyses. That includes CROs. We will not, in the paper, get into the oversight of outsourced programming, just how a CRO would do their quality control and validation. So I'm just going to go through the outline. There's multiple slides of basically the content that we'll be including in our white paper. So we'll talk about the scope. We'll move to defining what quality is, focusing really on getting accurate results for the quality, how important quality is to our deliverables, and we'll define the terms quality control versus validation and differentiate between those terminologies. Continuing the outline, we'll then move on in the white paper to talk about quality control culture and quality management. So we'll talk about good project planning and reporting processes, what are the traits of a good QC person, and what are some of our barriers that we have to doing good quality in our day-to-day work. Then we'll move into, in the white paper, talk about QC processes. So we'll start with general principles and then get into more specifics. How do we document our QC? How do we need approval of our QC? How about ADAM specifications versus ADAM data sets, tables, listings, and figures, entire case report tabulation packages, things like that. So we'll get into details about how to check our quality. We will talk about common quality issues, and then we'll talk about helpful tools. So things like checklists and automation obviously can help us to be faster, but there are risks involved with quality checks that are automated. So we're going to get somewhat into there. And then metrics. So what kind of metrics can we have and develop to measure our quality? So for our group, the next steps are to recruit cross-industry members to join our team and help us with the white paper. And we're going to do that from October and November of this year. And today we're asking people on this webinar to consider joining the group and helping with the white paper. We hope to finalize our membership by the end of the year, or by the end of November, sorry. And then we'll organize the teams and assign paper sections in the first 2 weeks of December. And then from December to March, we'll work on the initial draft, review and revisions from March to June. And then we hope to present the paper at the PhUSE CSS in June of 2019, and then launch it 1 month after the PhUSE CSS in July of 2019. And that is it for me. So thank you for your time, and please consider joining our team.
Can everybody see my screen? Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay, so I am Drashtti, and I'm going to talk about understanding RDF or linked data for potential non-clinical use. And with me is also Thomas, who's on the co-lead, who is a colleague from Novo Nordisk. In this presentation, I'm trying to really give you a high-level overview on what we mean when we say RDF or linked data, what is the hype about everything, and what do we really intend to get done in this work stream. So in 1989, the internet came into existence, and it opened a door of plethora of opportunities, especially because predominantly we started with the HTML, and there was no expert knowledge required. We could get simple information quickly, and we could also retrieve a lot of information via the search engines. And so the web became a linked world of documents. But Tim Berners-Lee, who was the inventor of the World Wide Web, had actually dreamt that the web is where the computers were capable of analyzing all the data on the web. And that means that the web that came into existence was not doing enough to be able to analyze all the data. And so in 2001, he came up with this term called the semantic web. And he said that the humans have contextual knowledge, they have the world knowledge, and they have the experience to solve the problem. And so it's easier for us when we look at certain data and understand what it really means. But the machine or the computer cannot understand what are you trying to say with those linked data, with those linked documents. And so he envisioned that the semantic web, instead of being a web of linked documents, will be a web of linked data. And that is how the whole semantic web concept came into being. So you can say it's an extension of the current web in which information is given, it's well-defined meaning, it's better enabling computers and people to work in cooperation. To give you a very, very simple example, if you look at the pictures of the two pandas, and if we consider a statement, panda eats shoots and leaves, as a human, we can definitely say, it's this picture that we're talking about. But how will the machine realize that it's not this random panda who's got hold of a gun and is shooting around people? And this is the essence of what they call the semantic web stack. So they say that we will break down the sentence of having panda eats shoots and panda eats leaves into two simple statements which consists of a subject, a predicate, and an object. So now we know that a panda that statement is consists of two sentences, and that we can now annotate this panda and the shoots and the leaves to an ontology which is defined. And so here I know this giant panda is what I mean with the word panda, and with shoots and leaves, it's a part of the plant. Behind these ontology is a unique URI which is assigned to this term, which is then being able, both the machine and the humans can understand what the context is. So if someone says what the semantic web stack is, it's basically RDF, which is the resource description framework, which is basically these statements which are broken down into a subject, predicate, object, which is being backed up by an ontology, which is a formal way of representing things. And behind this each ontological term or this each concept is a unique identifier. And so the three of them build what we call the semantic web stack. As part of the program, we said, or as part of the project, we said that as we're moving forward and all pharma companies are becoming more data-driven, there is this urgent requirement that we standardize our data, we integrate our data, and we really find knowledge from these data sets. And so Cent, as one of the standard templates to say so, in which we deliver our data, we realized that there are some inconsistencies which needs to be recognized and which could be then solved by using this semantic web stack. So for example, I have taken this MA spec and I've taken two values that I've seen in a data set. And the value was bone marrow femur and bone marrow sternum. I do not know what this variable is trying to tell me or what this value is trying to tell me. Is it trying to tell me that it's a part of a bone, or is it trying to describe a type of a bone? And so we, in this project, would like to identify such variables and such values and bring consistency and standardization and to better represent this data, to say this variable represents a part of a bone, or the other variable describes the type of the bone. So if you may say so, eventually this is how a graph or knowledge graph would look like. So we have a subject, which is part of we have a study which has a subject. The subject has certain specimen type. It belongs to, it has a certain gender or sex, and sex could be only of two variables, for example. In this instance, could be either male or female. And this way, we form this entire graph of representing what the data is actually trying to tell us. This is intuitive, and this is much better than the, and we would actually, as part of the project, also evaluate why we should store our data in a graph way or in the standard relational database. And in why are we looking at this technology? I think, like I said, there's a lot of hype behind it, and that was really reflected in the hype cycle for the emerging technologies of 2018, which was published by Gartner. And you can see that the knowledge graphs is the one that is triggering innovation. So what do we really want to achieve through this project is to understand what semantic web really is. Like I said, I've given a very high-level overview of what we're dealing with, what the technology is, but obviously there's much more in detail. Then we aim to look into understanding the work that has already been done in terms of what are the ontologies out there, how are they different from vocabularies, terminologies, models. What do we really mean by these metadata models and metadata framework? What are the scripts and tools that are already out there that could assist us in building these data sets and technology up? We are also aware that there is already a collaboration with, or there is actually a project within the clinical data space where they're trying to represent clinical data in RDF. So we will definitely be aligning with them and leveraging the work that they've already done. And at the end of the day, our dream is about a linked data future, of which Tim Berners-Lee also had a dream of. And so this is what I wanted to present as a high-level overview about our project. And we're looking for volunteers to come and join us. Thank you.
Sorry, I was still muted. Hi, I'm Mary Banach. Let me open my screen. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm representing the Clinical Development Design Framework Group. This is a summary of our activities. Right now, our project is on hiatus because everybody has been extremely busy. But Scott asked me to present a summary of our activities and also to tell you that we're available if we can help with other projects, and that we want to find a permanent home within PhUSE for all of the data that we've collected, because we think it'll be helpful to others. I'm going to start in kind of a reverse order because I want to do thank yous. This has been an incredible group. We have been working together since 2015, and I could spend hours telling you about these people and their contributions. They have just been phenomenal. But I really want to point out, especially Hamsam Ko. He has been the best collaborator, the best support person. So if anybody needs help on a project, Hamsam is so good and is really good about pointing out exactly what you need, asking you very direct questions so that you really think about, am I presenting this in the best way? And I also owe a debt of gratitude to Armando Oliva. The last year, he's been helping us. We put together some CMAP so that we had some structure to our project. Okay, we started in 2015. Laszlo is Bosco is what we call, this is his baby. He wrote, he was working with the European groups at PhUSE, and they wrote Smart Program Design through a Common Information Model. Wayne Kubik invited him to the 2015 CDD interchange, and I happened to be there. And so I was talking to Laszlo and Wayne and Frederick, and we said, where do we go? What's next steps? And at that time, there wasn't room, and CDD wasn't ready for it to become a CDD project. So Wayne suggested that we come to PhUSE to really develop our project. So between 2016 and 2017, we were at the PhUSE CSS and did our presentations, had workshops. I really super recommend the PhUSE template. It really, really, really helped us to become organized. But as we started working, especially trying to make this as part of, it started out as building a clinical development plan in RDF. That was our first title. And we realized that we didn't have an ontology. I mean, when we talk about design, it's all over the place in terms of a product. So building an ontology was really important. But the PhUSE template made us put all of this together, made us put the white paper together. The white paper turned out to be so put together that we ended up with an applied clinical trials paper, and it's been well received. And then this last year, we presented at DIA. We actually had Armando help us to present a poster on the clinical development design framework, assisting and improving decision-making for product development. This is basically how we started. If you go back to Laszlo's first paper, you will find the figure on the right. Okay, so when we're talking about design, we're talking about everything. Phase 1 all the way to post-marketing studies. What are the questions? How were the decisions made? Who made these design decisions? How were they made? And so that was in Laszlo's very first paper, and when we first started working with CSS, we talked about all these cells and how do we work with all these cells in the design elements. So as we're working, we thought, well, what is it we're doing? Okay, what do these design decisions, what contributes, what is an influencer, what is a constraint, what exactly happens when you're making a design decision, and how do we get them in one place? How do we know who decided this particular dose? Who decided? Why did they decide this? Where do you get that information? And so that got us thinking about how do we get this all together? Well, we needed an ontology. We really wanted to put this in RDF, but we need an ontology. What are all the terms? You know, we have this high level here of terms, but what are all the terms, and how do the terms go together, and how are they linked? And so with Armando's help, we actually came out with a structure for a CMAP, and we used the efficacy claim design to think about those decisions. And so Armando gave us rules that really helped us with our structure, because we were kind of just floating around. As you see in the other picture, we kind of made designs and we put our figures back and forth, and we all had different ideas, but how do we structure this that we then can collect more information? We can go into each one of these cells and collect information, and then we can, what we really want to do is make this in RDF so that we can collect all the data within the drug companies, especially, well, for example, the blue set, who? You know, where do we get all of the who information, and what were their decisions? I mean, basically we all know we have sign-offs, but how do we know which of these sign-offs, what's taking place in each of these sign-offs? And so our future plans are that we're working with Scott to make sure there's a permanent home, because I think these documents, we have a great set of slides. Steven Hirschfeld from NIH has created numerous slides for us, presentations to really think about design development. Maria Bjerregaard and Kirsten Forsberg in AstraZeneca in Sweden have given lots of presentations, especially PhUSE EU. So we have all of their materials all together, and so we want to find a permanent home that you can access it. And then we're looking for collaborators because we know we need to build the software behind this. So we've been talking to Transcelerate and the AMI initiatives and other industry sponsors. And we also are looking at academia, because could we really further this whole CMAPs? We really need some academic thinking behind it. And so that is where we are at right now. Thanks you.
So thanks so much for all the presentations and the insight into the work of the working groups, which is really highly appreciated, but I can tell it's also a lot of fun and a lot of learning. So I really could encourage everybody to give it a try and join the group you're mostly interested in. So I didn't see any questions so far, but you can still submit your questions either through the PhUSE office or to any of the members of the board of directors or to working group leads. So don't hesitate to reach out, and I guess a lot of people will anyway meet in Frankfurt and can talk and exchange ideas directly. So having said that, I remind that we will have the next Wednesday webinar on November the 28th. And I'm hoping to see many of you in Frankfurt. Thanks a lot for all your time today.